All right, so today we're going to dive into a pretty heavy case.
Yeah,
You wanted to learn more about Nathaniel White,
right.
the serial killer who terrorized the Hudson Valley back in the early 90s.
Yeah, in the early 90s, that's right.
And you sent over a ton of information, court records, articles.
Yeah.
You even dug up a clip from a documentary.
You really did your research.
Well, we did our best.
Yeah,
It's going to be disturbing,
for sure.
no question. But I think it'll be interesting to try to understand White's crimes, the impact they had, and how he was eventually brought to justice.
Yeah, I mean, his early life is particularly interesting.
Oh, how so?
Well, it seems like a pretty ordinary life, you know?
Really?
Grew up in Poughkeepsie, graduated high school in '79, even served in the Army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from 1980 to '83.
So no red flags, no early signs of, this darkness to come.
Not that we can see from the records we have. And
Really?
that's part of what makes this case so perplexing. It's like he lived two completely separate lives, you know? And this brings us to 1991 when White commits his first murder.
Okay.
And he claims he was inspired by a movie,
What movie?
RoboCop 2.
RoboCop 2.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little eerie. I mean,
Yeah.
how often do you see a killer copycatting a fictional crime?
It happens more often than you think.
Really?
It's not the norm by any means,
Right.
but it's not unheard of either.
I guess I just never really thought about it.
Yeah, but in White's case, it really offers a glimpse into his psyche.
Yeah.
You know, was he desensitized to violence by the film?
Oh, interesting.
Or did it just provide a framework for his pre-existing urges?
Okay, so just to back up a second, this first murder, this was before his prison sentence.
Right. We're talking about the abduction.
Yeah, the 16-year-old girl.
Right. That case was before the murder.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, that case was mishandled really from the start.
Oh, really?
Yeah, White was allowed to plead guilty to a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor?
Yeah, as part of a plea deal.
So that means,
So basically, he admitted to a lesser charge in exchange for a reduced sentence. So he ended up serving only a year.
a year.
And then he got parole.
So he kidnaps a teenager, gets a slap on the wrist, and then goes on to commit multiple murders?
Yeah.
I mean, how is that even possible?
It's a huge failure of the system.
Do you think if he had gotten a stricter sentence earlier on, maybe those later tragedies could have been prevented?
It's impossible to say for sure.
Right.
Some people argue that a harsher punishment would have deterred him,
Yeah,
but there's really no guarantee.
I guess that makes sense.
But what we do know is that his violence escalated dramatically after his release.
Okay, so let's break down the timeline.
Okay.
Before the whole RoboCop 2 thing, he murdered Juliana Frank in 1991.
Right. Juliana Frank, she was pregnant with her third child when he killed her.
Oh my God.
They found her body on abandoned railroad tracks.
That's awful.
And it's chilling to think about the fact that this happened before the RoboCop 2 claim.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems like his MO was already developing.
So the movie may not have been the inspiration he claimed.
It might have been an influence later,
What?
but it wasn't the root cause.
Wow.
And then, after parole, he targets Christine Klebb,
Who was?
his girlfriend's niece.
What?
Yeah, she was only 14 years old.
Oh my God.
Her disappearance in June of '92 sent shockwaves through the community.
I can imagine.
I mean, the fact that he was close to the family, it
Right.
adds this whole other layer of betrayal and manipulation.
That's just horrifying.
It is. He violated their trust. Maybe he was seeking some kind of twisted sense of control over those closest to him.
God, that's a level of depravity that's hard to even comprehend.
It really is.
And then just a month later, Lorette Huggins Revere, another woman connected to his girlfriend, is murdered in her own home.
Right, and her children had slept over at White's house just days before.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so this wasn't just some random act of violence. This was calculated, this was personal.
So he knew his victims.
He knew them, he was in their homes.
It seems like it just kept escalating.
Absolutely. And then in July of '92, we have the double murder of Angelina Hopkins and Brenda Whiteside.
Okay, what happened there?
They met White at a bar.
A bar.
Yeah, and they were last seen leaving with him.
Do you think he was using bars as hunting grounds?
It's possible. Bars can provide a sense of anonymity for predators.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They can blend in, observe potential victims, exploit the relaxed atmosphere.
So he could just watch and wait.
Right, exactly.
And then just a few days later, Adrienne Hunter was stabbed to death.
Right. Her body was found near a burned-out restaurant.
It's just this relentless spree of violence.
It is. And each murder, it offers clues.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are these subtle shifts in his behavior that paint a grim picture.
Like what?
Well, was he becoming more impulsive, more reckless?
Huh.
Or was there some kind of chilling logic behind his choices? A pattern we haven't yet deciphered.
God, it's mind-boggling how we managed to evade capture for so long.
I know, but the breakthrough in the case didn't actually come from police work.
Really? How did they catch him?
It was Angelina Hopkins' sister, Cecilia.
Okay.
She witnessed Angelina leaving the bar with White,
Oh, wow.
and she became instrumental in identifying him.
So she helped bring him down.
Absolutely.
Talk about courage. I mean,
Right.
not only did she suffer the loss of her sister, but she actively participated in bringing her killer to justice.
Yeah, it's a powerful example of how citizen involvement can be key in solving crimes.
It's a glimmer of hope in this otherwise incredibly dark story.
It really is.
And thankfully, her efforts paid off. White was indicted and convicted on all counts.
Right. He received a sentence of 150 years to life.
Wow.
A sentence that reflects the sheer brutality of his crimes. But, it raises a question.
What's that?
Does the sentence, no matter how long, truly bring closure or sense of justice for the families left behind?
It's a question that probably haunts them every day.
Yeah.
And it leads us to the bigger picture. How did this happen and how do we prevent it from happening again?
Right? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? It's interesting to think about the role of the media in all of this.
Oh, wow. So,
Well, we talked about White's claim that RoboCop 2 influenced his first murder,
right.
but then there's all the media coverage about him,
Yeah.
all the documentaries and TV shows that dissect his crimes.
It's like this weird feedback loop, right?
As it does.
He's inspired by media and then he becomes the subject of media.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's a danger in that, giving these killers a platform.
It's a valid concern for sure. I mean, the ethics of true crime media are always being debated.
Right.
On the one hand, they can raise awareness, give voice to the victims,
Yeah,
maybe even help solve cold cases.
absolutely.
But then there's the risk of glorifying violence or inspiring copycats.
You're right.
And then there's the whole question of whether we're exploiting these tragedies for entertainment.
It's a tricky balance.
For sure.
And it's worth noting that even the media's portrayal of White hasn't always been accurate.
No.
Yeah, there was a case where a TV station mistakenly used a photo of a completely different Nathaniel White.
What?
Yeah, an African-American man living in Florida.
Whoa, they got the wrong guy.
They did, and it was in a documentary about the serial killer.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
It was a huge mess.
Yeah,
He ended up suing the station for defamation.
I can't believe that happened.
It just highlights the importance of responsible journalism,
Absolutely.
especially when you're dealing with sensitive topics like this.
No kidding. It's a reminder that there are real people behind these headlines.
Right.
People whose lives are forever altered by these events.
Exactly. We can't lose sight of the human cost.
Yeah.
These weren't just statistics,
Right.
These were daughters, mothers, sisters, friends.
Uh-huh.
Each life cut short represents a ripple effect of grief and trauma that extends far beyond the immediate victims.
It's easy to get caught up in the details of the investigation,
Yeah.
the psychology of the killer.
Uh-huh.
But we have to remember the impact on those left behind.
Absolutely. And that's where I think the conversation needs to shift,
Yeah.
We've explored White's background, his crimes, the flaws in the system.
Right.
But what about the victims' families?
Yeah.
What about the lasting impact on the community?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
How do communities heal after something like this?
Right.
What kind of support is there for them?
These are the questions we need to be asking.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to focus on the perpetrators,
Uh-huh.
but the stories of resilience,
Oh, yeah.
the people who pick up the pieces and rebuild their lives,
Right.
those stories are just as important.
Absolutely. And those stories often don't get the same attention.
Yeah.
It's like we're drawn to the darkness, but hesitant to acknowledge the light that pushes back against it.
I think there's some truth to that, but I also think there's a growing awareness of the need for a more holistic approach
Okay.
to understanding crime and its impact.
Yeah.
It's not just about catching the bad guy.
No.
It's about supporting the victims, preventing future tragedies, and fostering a sense of safety and justice for everyone.
Thinking back to White's sentence, 150 years to life,
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder, is that really justice?
That's a tough question,
Yeah.
The legal system is designed to punish,
Right.
but also to rehabilitate.
Uh-huh.
In White's case, given the nature of his crimes, the focus is definitely on punishment.
Yeah.
But even within the prison system, are there opportunities for him to confront his actions,
Okay.
to seek some form of redemption?
That opens up a whole other can of worms.
It does.
I mean, can someone who's committed such horrific acts ever truly be rehabilitated?
That's a question I don't have the answer to,
Yeah.
but I think it's a conversation worth having.
You okay?
And it ties into a broader question about the purpose of punishment.
Mhm.
Is it purely about retribution?
Right.
Or should there be an element of restoration
For the offender.
for the offender and for society as a whole?
Those are some pretty heavy philosophical questions.
They are, but I guess that's the point of a deep dive like this, right?
I guess so.
To go beyond the surface, to wrestle with the uncomfortable truths and the questions that don't have easy answers.
We may not find all the answers, but asking the right questions is essential.
I agree with that. It's how we learn, how we grow, and how we as a society can work towards a future where tragedies like this are less likely to happen.
It's a daunting task, but one worth pursuing. We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but I feel like there's still so much to unpack.
There always is with cases like this, but I think we've laid a solid foundation. We've examined the facts, considered the psychological and sociological aspects, and acknowledged the ethical dilemmas.
Right.
Now it's up to each of us to take this knowledge and use it to inform our own understanding of the world.
To be more aware, more informed, and hopefully more proactive in preventing violence and supporting those who've been affected by it.
That's the ultimate goal, to turn knowledge into action and to build a safer, more just society for everyone.
Okay, so, as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Nathaniel White's case, I can't stop thinking about that RoboCop 2 connection.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to just dismiss it as a weird detail,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it points to something deeper,
Like what?
like how violence is everywhere in our society.
It's like this blurring of lines between fantasy and reality, right?
Right, exactly.
So did that movie just give White a blueprint?
Yeah.
Or did it do something more insidious, like
Yeah.
desensitize him to violence and make it easier for him to cross that line?
That's a scary thought.
It is.
I mean, we're constantly exposed to violent images in movies, TV, video games.
Yeah.
Does all that exposure have a lasting impact on us?
It's a really important question to consider.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, watching a movie isn't going to turn someone into a killer.
Right.
But it's worth thinking about how that constant exposure might contribute to a culture where violence becomes normalized.
Especially for someone who's already prone to violent behavior.
Exactly. It could be a dangerous combination.
So what can we do about it?
Well, I don't think it's about censorship.
Yeah.
It's about media literacy.
What do you mean?
We need to be critical thinkers about the content we consume
Oh, yeah.
and understand the power of storytelling
Okay.
for both good and bad.
I see what you're saying.
When we look at White's case, it raises questions about our justice system, too.
Yeah, how so?
I mean, he was paroled after kidnapping a teenager,
right.
and then he goes on to murder 6 women.
It's a pretty stark reminder that our systems aren't perfect.
They're not. There are always going to be cases where individuals slip through the cracks, where warning signs are missed,
Right.
and minor offenses escalate into horrific crimes.
It's frustrating.
It is, but what can we do to try to stop these tragedies from happening? I think we need to be more proactive in addressing the root causes of violence.
Like what?
Poverty, mental health issues, substance abuse.
Right.
All these factors can contribute to criminal behavior.
So tackle the problem at its source, not just react after the fact.
Right. And we also need to equip our criminal justice system to identify and address potential risks.
Does that mean?
Comprehensive risk assessments, effective rehabilitation programs, strong supervision for parolees.
It's a complex problem.
It is. There are no easy answers.
But admitting that we can do better is a good first step, right?
Absolutely, we can. And we must do better.
And that includes holding our institutions accountable when they fail,
Right.
while also working towards solutions that create both justice and safety for everyone.
That's the goal.
It's a tall order.
It is, but it's worth striving for.
Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the case of Nathaniel White. It's been a tough one, but I think it's important to engage with these difficult topics,
I agree.
to learn from them, to try to understand how we can prevent these tragedies from happening again.
And to remember the victims.
Yes, absolutely. To honor their memory and to support their families and communities
It's about seeking justice.
and working towards a safer world for everyone.
That's right.